Hi guys, I'm Mark and I'm an oyster boy, and today I'm here to talk to you about cooling and serving your kegged beer. Now, the product that I'm going to be talking about today can be used regardless of whether you're a home brewer and you're kegging your own beer, or if you've just got a home bar set up at home and you have gone and bought commercial kegs of beer from your local wholesaler. The product that I'm going to be talking about is an inline chiller. Now, this can either be a shelf chiller or a mini remote chiller, and essentially is a big ice bath that your beer is passed through on the way to the tap. So in theory, your beer can go in, maybe not warm, but probably closer to room temperature, and come out of the glass in drinking temperature. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the equipment that you're going to need to make this work, the estimated costs of buying and fitting these parts, and also the pros and cons of owning one of these systems. So stay tuned. And first of all, let's look at what I use to chill my beer. Okay, so here we are outside, and this is the unit that I use to chill and serve my beer. Well, I use it to chill the beer. It's the gas and the regulators and the tap that serves it. But this is what makes my beer go from a room-ish temperature keg to being nice and cold coming out of the tap. Now, essentially, this is a 4-product chilling unit. I think it is an MF refrigeration 4-line mini remote chiller. There's lots of different types of these available. This is a mini remote, so it's got a separate top to the ice bath, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. But this is quite a large unit for home use. The other ones that might be more suitable for you might be a shelf chiller. I'll pop a picture of one of those on the screen now. You can get those in up to multiple 4, 6, 8 line units as well, but they're far more compact and can be more use inside. But essentially what this is down at the bottom there is a compressor and refrigerant and basically a freezer down here, and it has cooling cores that go all around the outside here, and when you lift the top off, what you've got is nice long stainless steel lines that your product or your beer will run through on its way to the tap. Just plop that back on there. There we go. And these here are recirculation lines, which then pump cold water up through an insulated Python tube on the way to the tap, which keeps your beer cold from the unit to the tap, and also can go through the tap as well, so you don't get beer warming up and having all of the CO2 escape from solution, causing excessive fobbing in the line or lots of foam in your pint glass. So this is already full of water. I think this holds about 20 or 25 litres of water, and I'm going to plug that in now. We'll see what temperature it's at here, and then I know from using this before that it takes about 2 hours for it to cool down and form an ice block inside here, which I'll show you when it's ready to go. And once this is up and running, we'll show you how to hook it up to a system and run beer through it. Before I switch that unit on, I'm just going to show you a top-down view of the unit here. You can see you've got your 4 different product lines here. So product in on the right, and product out on the left, and these correspond all the way down. 3, 4. On these stickers, it'll normally tell you the line length, whether it's long or short. All of the lengths in mine are long, and it says whether it's in or out. This is the product in, and that's the product outside. And these, like I say, are the 2 recirculation loops, or 2 recirculation pipes. Now, before we turn it on, we have to connect those to the Python line. And I'll explain what that is in a moment when I go and get the tap. What that's going to do is take the cool water, which is inside here. You can probably see there's some liquid in there, and it will recirculate it all the way up to the tap and keep things nice and chilly, so you've got a nice cold beer. If I was to turn that on now, water would just shoot out of one of these pipes, and we don't want that to happen at all. This thing on here is part of the recirculation pump. Right, okay, so here we are with the extra things that you're going to need to get this system up and running. So the first thing you're going to need is over here, which is a big old gas bottle. You could probably use a smaller gas bottle if you wanted, with the relevant connector attached to it. So I'm going to be serving from a corny keg, so I've got my little ball lock valve on there. Make sure you secure your gas bottle so it doesn't just get blown over. That would be terrible. Second thing you're going to need is some kind of insulated line with a recirculation pipe in. So as you can see here, this tube, this pipework has 4 lines in there. So I've got 2 product lines, which are the coloured ones, which help me know which one's which when it gets to the other end. And then, as well as that, we've got these 2 empty lines, which are just going to come up to these 2 connectors here. They're going to connect to the tap and recirculate around there. So I'm just going to show you that and the tap that I've got. Right, so this is the font that I'm going to be using today to show you how it works. This is a 2-line Cobra font with some nice stainless steel Tech Flow taps on there, and this is just going to bolt onto the side of my table here like that. I'll do that in a minute, but just show you at the other end you've got the same 2 3/8 pipes for recirculation, and you've also got 2 3/16 pipes for the beer. Now, in between the Python and the taps there, you have these flow control devices which reduce the line diameter down from 3/8 to 3/16 and allow you to increase and decrease the flow rate of the beer by twisting it like this. So if your beer's coming out of the tap too fast, you've got too much foam, or it's not quite cold enough, you slow the flow rate down, so you spend more time in the ice bath to cool it down further. So you get colder beer by slowing it down. You also get reduced frothing when you pour it, because the slow will be less, like a flow control tap basically. So we will connect these 2 pipes to these. I'll show you that now. All right, so apologies for how disgusting this outdoor table is. Hasn't been used very much, and definitely haven't cleaned and oiled it this year. So as I said, you've got these 2 recirculation lines, which we're just going to hook up directly to the lines there. Just push those in. Love John Guest push-fit fittings. And then these 2 can go in the flow controls here, like so, and like so. And this recirculation line just goes all the way up to the base of the tap, and then it goes up into the tap, loops around at the top, comes back down, so it keeps your beer cold all the way up to the tap. And then to attach this to the side of the table, it's as simple as just pushing it on and then tightening up the bolts underneath. So you get them hand tight first. And then drop in their drip trays. There we go. Okay, so we're back over the unit now, and I've got obviously my 2 recirculation lines which need to be attached onto the 2 posts there. Recirculation. This actually comes out as a 15mm, and I've put a down to 3/8 reducer on it. And I know that it's the red product line that's going to be the one in use today, so I'm just going to shove that onto there, and that's the output setup ready. And as my beer is going to be coming out of a mini corny keg, I've got a corny liquid outpost sat to the end of some 3/8 tubing, and that's onto the in post. So the unit's up and running now, the compressor's just kicked in, and the liquid inside is currently at 21 degrees. We're going to give that 2 hours, come back and see where we're up to. Hi guys, back again, and it's been, what, 2 hours now? I think the screen on the chiller's telling me it's about -1 or -1.5 in there, so we should be good to go. I know it goes down to about -3 before it cycles the compressor off and then on again, but I thought we'll just give it a go because I want to get wrapped up for the day and some other editing bits that I want to do as well. So I have got some cleaner, well, I've had some line cleaner in the lines, and I've rinsed out with water because I haven't used this font for a while, or that Python. So I've pushed some line cleaner through and I've rinsed that out, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the beer on, we're going to draw it through, and we're going to see how it works for cooling it down. So bear with me 1 second. Just wanted to toddle off and get a little thermometer here. So this is a keg of beer which has been in my utility room for a couple of days. The temperature of this keg is 22 degrees. I'm now going to hook this up to the system, and I'm going to pull it through the line, and we'll see what it comes out at. Okay. So first of all, you just need to pull the water that I've used to rinse the lines through the system, and you'll wait until you see your beer coming out, and then you're good to go and pour. Shouldn't really take particularly long. Here we go. There we go. So that can just go off for waste. Okay, well, the more astute of you may notice that it looks slightly darker than it was earlier. Unfortunately, when I was filming, I'd run out of space on my phone, so had to set everything up again because I actually put everything away before I realised. So I've set everything up again, same as it was before. Chiller's back to like minus half a degree. Beer was still inside in the utility room. So here we go again, ready to pour. Nice clean glass, rinse that out, and let's give it a whirl. There's nothing quite as good as having your own draft beer at home. Either, you know, a pint of commercial or your own homebrew stuff. Fairly terrible pour, but look, there we are. That's pretty nice now. I can already tell it feels cold in my hand. Much colder than the 20-something degrees that the keg is anyway. A little instant read thermometer here, and we'll whack that in and see where we're down to. So what are we now? 5, just going under 5 degrees. 4.8, 4.7, 4.5 degrees. So beer goes in at 20 degrees, comes out at 4.5 degrees, which in my opinion is fairly perfect drinking temperature. And cheers. Now that is mighty refreshing. Now the chill does go down to about -3, so if I left it until it was fully cold, which normally you would do, this would be coming out closer to, you know, between 3 and 4 degrees, I would think. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get all this packed away, and I'm going to go inside and I'm going to tell you about some of the pros and cons and other things that you need to take into consideration when you get one of these chillers. So, catch you shortly. Okay, so now I've shown you how to set up and use one of these systems, it's time to look at some of the pros and cons of owning a system like this and some other things to consider before you go ahead and purchase one. First of all, we're going to look at some of the pros. Number 1, pouring your own beer on draft at home, regardless of whether it's your own homebrewed beer or commercially produced beer that you've purchased in a keg, is one of the coolest things you can do. Nothing is quite the same as having a pint poured off the tap, and when you've got all your friends around, you look like an absolute baller. So, massive pro there. Number 2, you are not restricted by the size of the kegs that you use on a system like this, in the same way that you are when you use a kegerator. If you've got an old converted fridge that you're storing your kegs inside, the chances are you can probably fit 1 or 2 corny kegs if it's an under-counter, or maybe 3 or 4 if it's a tall fridge on 2 levels. But if you were to go out and buy 50-litre kegs or use repurposed 30-litre or 50-litre Sankey kegs to put your homebrew in, you're going to struggle to fit more than one of those inside your fridge. With this kind of unit, because the beer kegs aren't chilled themselves, you can use whatever keg you want as long as you can fit it in the place where your chiller is. So if you've got a home bar and you can fit several large kegs underneath the bar top, nobody's going to see. If you saw when I was filming outside, behind me there's an outdoor kitchen that has taps drilled through the worktops. Now underneath there I've got a huge amount of space that I can store kegs. So I can have big Sankey kegs or Grundy kegs or whatever if I've got commercial beer, and I can run those through that system, or I can change it over to my homebrew, absolutely no problem. You're not restricted by the size of the keg, the physical size. Third pro for this system is that the kegs themselves don't have to be cold, which means when one runs out, you haven't got any downtime while you're chilling down another keg to put on. So if you entertain a lot, or you have a lot of parties or people around, and everyone's going through your homebrew like it's going out of fashion, or going through your beer like it's going out of fashion because it's free, because they're there, when the keg runs out, you can literally just put another keg on straight away. It doesn't have to be chilled. The system does that for you. So going from one keg to the other is a fairly seamless process, and there's no, oh no, we've run out of beer, unless you legitimately do run out of beer, but you know, that's poor planning really. Pro number 4 for these systems is that the look and feel of these systems can be changed massively. The system that I showed you today is a clamp-on tap, which would go onto the edge of either a kitchen worktop or a table or a bar if you've got a bar set up. The tap that I used was a stainless steel Cobra tap, which is quite plain but still looks very cool. I can make that tap look cooler by changing out the handles for different handles, or I could use a completely different style of font. There's huge amounts available. They're either branded from beers that you'll see on in pubs, or they could just be plain ones that maybe have a industrial look or feel, or could be made out of PVC pipework. You could throw one of those together if you wanted. Alternatively, in addition to the ones that clamp on the bar, if you saw behind me again in the video, the one that I've got, which is permanently situated on my outdoor kitchen, is drilled through the bar top. So there's nothing clamped on, it looks very discreet. Other than the fact that the beer taps are there, you wouldn't know that I've got a draft system hiding under there because you can't see anything else. And finally for the pros, number 5, these systems, although it might not look it because of the size, are fairly portable. When Penny got married last year, the venue that they chose didn't have a draft beer system. So we just took mine. We installed it under their bar where they had a bar for bottles and spirits. We put it under the bar, we switched it on a few hours before, or maybe the night before because we were down there quite early. We clamped the taps on and we left it, and we served beer to 100 plus people throughout the day. Now, we had a combination of homebrewed beers and also of commercial beers on there. Luckily, well not luckily, obviously, the homebrew beer all went while the Keg of Estrella didn't get finished, which was quite a cool, big-headed feeling after that. But once the wedding was finished, the next morning we went back, we loaded the system back into the boot of my car and drove home with it. So it is something that you can take round to a friend's house if they're having a party, or you can loan to your mate from work and have a big social event where they want beer on draft for the cool factor, or the fact that you can just give people a glass and say, oh, help yourself all day to the beers. So it is actually quite a portable and movable system, even though when you look at it, it might not seem that way from the outset. And now we're going to talk about some of the downsides to this kind of system. Number 1 is the placement. You are going to have to find somewhere to put it. Now, I've actually got 2 of these systems. The first one is underneath the outdoor kitchen, which you saw behind me in the videos. If you go back and look through some of our other videos, you'll see that me and Penny do pour our beers off those taps. They're not just for show, they're real. That one is hidden under the outdoor kitchen. I've got a second one which lives in the utility room, which is just behind me on the other side of this wall. And that one, luckily, I have space underneath my boiler, which is where that unit sits. And then underneath where the sink is, I put the kegs, and then I've got the same tap setup drilled through the worktops. Now, if you've got a very full room, you might struggle for space. However, you would also struggle for space for a kegerator in that situation. So it's no more of a hassle than that. When you think about it, it's probably less hassle, because if you've got one of the smaller units, say for example a Maxi 110 or 210 or 310 unit from Cornelius, or a Booth Brandl's shelf chiller, they are exactly what they say, they're shelf chillers. So they would just take up space on a shelf. They're probably about that kind of size and that deep. You do have to have somewhere to put it, but it's no more of a con than having to install a kegerator. Downside number 2 is that you might be able to hear the unit. So as we've said, my unit is on the larger size of what most people might want or need for in their house. It does contain a compressor, which is going to cycle on and off when the temperature goes up and down, and it does contain a pump which recirculates the liquid through the Python line up to the tap. They are not silent. Now, by no means are they incredibly noisy or noisy enough to put you off, but if it was in your main living space, you probably would get some questions about it. Mine are, like I say, in the utility room over there. You can hear it when you walk in there, but you can't really hear it other than that. And the one outside, underneath the outdoor kitchen, you can't hear at all. That one is absolutely perfect. So yes, they are slightly noisy, but nothing too bad. Downside number 3 is that these units can kick off quite a bit of heat, especially while they are in their cooling phase and forming the ice block inside. These operate using a compressor and sort of heat exchange, I guess. So as they are cooling down, as they are drawing the heat out of the liquid, they are also pumping that heat into your room. So if you don't have them in a well-ventilated space, or you can't open a window in there, then they will put out some heat into your room and they will warm it up, which can be an issue during the summer. Now, it's not as bad once the ice block has fully formed. So if you wanted to, what you could do is you could turn one of these units on overnight, form a very large ice block, then you could actually disconnect, on my version, the compressor, so that it just pumps, but it doesn't cycle the compressor on and off, which makes it a lot quieter, and also will stop it kicking that heat out into the room. Now, eventually, it will warm back up, but depending on what kind of unit you get. Like I say, I've got the one on the larger scale of things. If you were to get one of the smaller units, they don't kick out as much heat, so they're a bit more user-friendly. One last con to consider when you're looking at a system like this is that, unfortunately, your beer will not stay as fresh and last as long at room temperature as it would if it was kept in a fridge. We all know that really big hoppy beers do not last unless they are kept cold and stored correctly. If you are going to drink through these beers quickly, this is not going to be an issue for you. And some beers are far less susceptible to this kind of degradation than others. As I've said, very heavily hopped beers, big hazies, they're not going to last incredibly well out of the fridge for long periods of time. Whereas with a stout, you might actually get away with it for quite a while, or some lagers, you know, that it will last just fine. Me personally, I don't take long to get through a keg of beer, and especially when we've got people coming around at the weekend, it's kind of a free bar, so the beer gets drunk very quickly. Now we're going to talk about the costs of obtaining one of these systems as well. So when you buy one of these, it will come with pretty much everything you need if you buy a full setup. There are places online, lots of eBay sellers. There's a place in the Northwest called the One Stop Pub Shop, which is where I've bought quite a few parts from over the years. And they sell these as complete setups. Now, if you want a one product system, this will range anywhere from maybe $375 to £475, depending on the size of the chiller that you get, the font type that you get, you know, how you want your tap to look. I'll put some images up on the screen of current prices for what some of these setups are with, you know, with a Moretti tap or a 2-line setup with a Moretti and Strongbow tap. That's just a branding thing, by the way. You can run any beer through these systems. You're not limited by lager or cider or whatever. You might have to change out the gas that you use depending on what kind of beer you're getting. But you know, there's huge amounts of options available, and also the setup that you want will massively vary the price. If you want cheap plain taps or cheap plain fonts with plastic taps, they'll be significantly cheaper than a full-on massive branded tap setup. But that's completely up to you, and you can decide what looks coolest. Now, one other thing to consider when you're getting a system like this is what you already know. So when I first bought a setup like this, I'd been making my own beer for a long time, and I've been serving my beer from a kegerator. When you're carbonating beer in a fridge, the CO2 will be absorbed into the liquid a lot more easily when it's cold than it will when it's warm or at room temperature. So in my head, I had views like you would carbonate an ale at 10 psi, possibly, you know, 8 to 10 psi, or a lager might be at 15 to 20 psi. That's all well and good. However, when that beer is no longer cold anymore, the CO2 does not want to stay in solution as much as it did. So I can carbonate a beer in my fridge, because I still do ferment and condition beers in a fridge in the shed at the end of my garden. I can carbonate in there at the normal pressures that I would, but then when I take the beer out and I know it's going to come up to room temperature, I need to recalibrate my mind or recalculate what pressure I'm going to have that beer at to serve it. If I was to put a lager that I've carbonated at 15 psi or 15 to 20 psi in my fridge on gas at 15 to 20 psi when it was warm, the majority of that CO2 would escape from solution in the line, and I would have pints of foam coming out. So what you need to do is you need to go online and do a conversion from that PSI at 4 degrees up to that PSI at 20 degrees. And I think it came out last time I checked, you know, I was doing a lager was closer to 40 PSI for serving, and an ale was between 20 and 25 PSI. Now, that might sound wildly high and like you're gonna have lots of pouring issues, but as long as you use the flow controls correctly on your taps, you shouldn't have a problem. Now, I hope you found this video informative. I'm gonna put lots of links down below for places where I've bought equipment to do this kind of setup, including the stuff that I've used for the tower taps that you saw behind me in the video, the shop that I bought the font that I clamped on, and where I bought the chiller, and also some various other information resources which you will find helpful if you are using this kind of system. Please smash like, hit subscribe, comment, and let me know what you want to see next. And if you've got any questions about using a system like this at home, please do let me know. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.